Hello and welcome to the Oceanographic Podcast and this special In Conversation With episode in which I, Rob Hutchins, community editor here at Oceanographic, sit down with the man, the myth, the legend, the politician whisperer and the marine protected area specialist, Max Bello. A regular columnist with Oceanographic, Max now works with the Blue Marine Foundation, where his expertise is put to constant good use, travelling the globe to work alongside political leaders and local communities alike to build the marine protections that will contribute, in no small measure, to the ultimate and overarching goal to protect 30% of our planet's terrestrial and marine space by the year 2030. Among many things, Max is a climber, a diver, an environmentalist, and, as you will no doubt hear in the forthcoming 40 minutes of discussion, an utterly charming podcast guest. I caught up with Max at the Oceanographic London offices in spring this year. At the time, Max had recently returned from Chile, where he was instrumental in the signing of the country's Marine Protected Area Commitment, which quickly becomes the focus of conversation. In this episode, expect to dive into the childhood that made Max the person he is today and a hopeful outlook on why collaboration really will be key to driving positive impact for the ocean. Enjoy. But just to start off by saying thanks so much for popping in and chatting with us. It's always good to catch up and speak. So to dive into actually a bit of your background for a change and talk about your journey with ocean health and ocean storytelling, can you tell us about the moment that drew you to this line of work? What was that first connection point with the ocean?
I guess, yeah. I'm always kind of trying to search myself on like where this did start everything, and I can't quite pinpoint of like. I think there's so many things that kind of move, like it's a kind of road without end. But I used to be a climber, and I love mountains. I used to love like frogs, and I used to get lost in the forest. Then I started doing conservation more in the forest. Actually, I work at WWF. We created the first office in Chile, and then like I work with Doug Tompkins, which was this American guy who used to own North Face and other things, and then he put this money to buy land. But I guess that part of all of the things, as many people probably have, is like starting with my father, my mother. They love nature. They're from the south of Chile, and they had a special relation with that. And my father in particular, he loves birds and trees, and he knew them all, and I feel like comfortable in the forest. And then that took me to the ocean easily in a way, because of the connection, of course, and in Chile particularly, but and in Patagonia in particular. But it wasn't that easy as well, because there was a very kind of disconnected society with the ocean, and the ocean was kind of far. I grew up in Santiago, which is not far from the ocean. It's like 2 hours, but it was a little bit difficult to access because we were kind of a poor family, and you couldn't go if you wouldn't have some sort of money.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a mystery for me, and I guess that part of the thing it was always to know more about it.
Yeah. Oh wow. So what was it that like how did you overcome that barrier? Because I think actually that's a really interesting point, because I think that is a big barrier for most people, is that privilege element to access to the ocean actually does seem to have that sort of financial sort of hurdle to get across. And it's always fascinating me because we do talk about how much we want people or need people to reconnect, but how do we do that in a way that low income communities can actually do effectively? What does that look like? So what did that look like for you?
I think there is this this disconnect with the ocean in many ways. but I agree that we have created many barriers to. I guess that those barriers are, some of them are kind of going down too. For these generations, it's so much easier to explore technologically, or just the fact that you can get easily into these places. In my case, it was like we were also during dictator. My family was most of my family was prosecuted. I mean, we were kind of like in the blacklisted in a way. My father couldn't find a job, and many of those things. So it was difficult to get out of the situation we were. And even though the ocean was closed, it was far from us, and in many other ways. But at the same time, I think I grew up in a family that wanted to sort of protect. They wanted to know more about nature. That we wanted to spend time in nature, and my parents would take us, for example, to we didn't have money for expensive vacations, but we did have a tent. And so we were like, all my childhood, we would spend 1 month. They figured a way to get 1 month out, and we were camping for 1 month every single year in North Patagonia, in very kind of secluded places, because we're really not camping normal. I mean, but then I got to see things that most people wouldn't see. Also, we wouldn't go to cabin or a hotel or anything like that. It's just pure nature. So I guess that also was kind of a lucky thing in a way, having that experience and really, enjoying camping, spending time in nature was actually a great opening. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I really love that. Actually, like thinking about, I think what's the longest time I've spent camping with my family would be less than a week. A month seems a long time to be
And it would have been sometimes like so much rain, and we would just play. I have 3 brothers, and we would stay inside of the tent and playing all day, and going out in the rain and going maybe fishing and hiking in the forest. I mean, it was just beautiful, and a lot of indigenous communities also there, the Mapuche community. So we would spend a lot of time with them. They would invite us even to some ceremonies, and so it was this incredible opening that by chance it kind of opened all their doors. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That sounds like what a lovely childhood. Like to have those experiences. That sounds amazing. I'd almost sort of want to stay there in the conversation, but I feel like we've got to ask about your current role and the current sort of work that you do. So you've worked with policymakers across the world on NPA developments. What does that actually look like on the ground? Is that more diplomacy? Is it more science, or is it something else?
I think it's a little bit of everything there. It's building sort of bridges. I mean, I think it's connecting these people also for the real humans they are at the end of the day, with power or sense of power, but then bringing them to the fact that they're humans and they can leave also a legacy. I think most of it is that. I would say it's also science. I mean, I think it all started by kind of trying to translate science to people who necessarily wouldn't know or wouldn't understand why it would matter for them and for the decisions they were taking. I think it was also an exercise for me again of being, coming from a, post-dictator sort of society. It's still divided in Chile, to sort of break those silos and see, how left and right could actually work together for environment and maybe thinking of a better society, whatever you were thinking politically. I don't know. There are many things that came into that, and I think at the end of the day, it's about empathy. I see my job really as kind of exercising empathy every day with people. I understand what they want. I try to understand what they want, who they are, what they're looking for, and then I try also to put myself in their shoes and then explaining from my perspective what should we do in terms of conservation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally, yeah, and I totally get that, and I always come back to that idea that no one sets out to do the wrong thing. No one is set out to go and have a negative impact on the environment, but their focus is on something else. That the consequences are that this does have but it's just shifting that perspective and allowing them to see a broader picture, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. A matter of fact, I mean, people who sometimes you think they do wrong, and they probably do. Some do wrong. At the end of the day, they go to their houses and they love their kids, and they're like, many things that you do that we do, and they think they're doing right for their family and for their kids and everything. It's a matter of perspective in a way, and sometimes a lot of misinformation or lack of information to use it. And that, I think, it was one of the key things for me, like breaking those silos and getting out of this prejudgment of people, and then realizing that many of them actually wanted to do things that were in our side, to call it in a way.
Yeah. It must feel really sort of rewarding when you see those moments where the penny drops, or someone's eyes sort of open up to those wider issues and to the positive actions that can be taken. But have you ever been surprised? Is there a country or a region or something that's happened that's surprised you, either in terms of their willingness or maybe even their reluctance to embrace like ocean protection?
Constantly, I would say. And it's been a constant sort of trip onto this, surprising. I mean, when I start, for example, in Chile, if I look back, I see that it was almost impossible to think nothing is going to happen. I mean, we're not going to create marine protected areas. We were in like less than 1%, and now we're with Juan Fernandez on 54. I mean, the 10th biggest economic exclusive zone on Earth. And I truly, at that point, at the beginning, I thought, no, we're not going to make it. And many people were like, no, we're not going to. And the surprise of actually then finding that it is possible, that you could do it. And then see the whole region changing, no? You know what? We used to have campaigns that were identifying places, like, for example, Galapagos. Okay, we need to extend Galapagos. Everybody knows it's important, it's key. And then starting a campaign from scratch, But now that we have I mean, the other day I was walking up someone called me, the minister of a country, saying, Max, please, can you come as soon as possible? We want to work on the 30%. We want to create marine protectors. Can you help us? I would never expect that was the case. No, I would expect always that I would have to go to a country, convince the groups and NGOs, maybe if they were not already convinced, but then convincing the government, convincing the bigger society, and then do the whole work from scratch. That is like we're ahead of that.
Yeah, that's mad.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is crazy. Okay, since you mentioned Chile, I've just skipped across a few questions to dive into that Chile, the Juan Fernandez work. So can you tell us about what Blue Marine Foundation has been working on there? What is the opportunity there, and why does that matter beyond Chilean waters? Obviously, talking about the high seas element.
So with Juan Fernandez, I mean, I know that community for over 20 years. It was a big pleasure and privilege. I was the first kind of NGO person to get to the island and to meet the community and then sort of support them. But it was really them who were the ones who were inviting us. At that time, I used to work at Oceana, and it was, they like, we want to work on this, we want to protect this, we want to stop this people, and you don't see that very often. So it's been a long sort of journey with them. It's a community that really kind of breaks a lot of paradigms of, fishermen normally are against marine protected areas. No, these fishermen are pushing for the biggest marine protected areas and high, no take marine protected areas, etc. So the first thing is like a community that really is transformed and is transforming, the world and the way that we see things. then of course that sort of like thing it makes changes in the society, political changes. Of course, a politician that sees community behind, that sees people really pushing for these things, thinks differently, no? And if it's just NGOs or if it's just the scientists, but when you get all together, it's just it changed everything. So Chile's been on to this also journey that, from 1% jumping to 4%, almost 5%, and then jumping from there to 43% in the last, couple of years, and now with Juan Fernandez 54, which then, transformed not only Chile in terms of the amount of marine protected areas, but to become a leader and to take the ocean into the agenda, one of the most proactive countries against deep sea mining. They took all the, for the moratorium for stopping the harmful subsidies to the WTO, to being one of the most active on the BBNJ discussion, and actually now calling, for being the house of the agreement. So then you see there's a connection. Of course, there are many things still need to be happening in Chile itself. We have the salmon farming, which is extremely destructive. We have big projects like mining, like Dominga and many others. But there are sort of like, really there's a consistency. And I think that has been really the key and the beauty of seeing the change.
Just on that, and I won't put this in because this is just general curiosity about what happened when the announcement was made, and then there was a sort of like flit in between, or the back and forth.
No,
and
we
then
should put this, yeah.
Okay, let's put this in then. So yeah, can you just clarify what's going on?
It wasn't easy to get to the finish line. We were of course pushing for doing it earlier. The government dragged their feet for a while, and then finally, particularly the Ministry of Environment, and then finally, got all the things put it together, and then the president was able to sign. But he signed the last few hours that he could sign. It was the last administrative act of the president, actually. And of course, because of that, and because rightfully, I mean, the new government, which, this is a very left government leaving, and a very, far right government coming in. But normally, all the governments, they decide to review the last few decrees, which, makes sense. You never know what, can be put it there before just the last minute, and so they want to make sure. But of course, as this package of different decrees were taken, the last decree was taken too. And so it's been removed from the process, basically, which is a normal thing to do. And we're expecting that to be then reposted and to continue the process and finalize and publish, basically. Okay. We are looking at, being very vigilant if there are any sort of potential danger of change. As far as we know, there's not. There have been voices of for example, the semi-industrial fishing of the swordfish who wants to kind of make changes, but the process already happened. Yeah. I mean, this is a process that has been for a couple of years on putting together a proposal of making an open consultation and everything. So the process have been done, and so what we're expecting now is for them to do this review, check if everything is good, and then put it back. And as far as we know, and they've been consistent on informing us, that's exactly what is happening. So cool. We're kind of like cool in terms of like we're expecting that to be back soon.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Is there a sort of timeline that's got to be done?
There's no. They took 43 decrees, right. And so they're reviewing a lot of things. Yeah. I'm pretty sure some of them are way more complex, and then there, I guess, political also interest in some of them more than others. Yeah, yeah. What they have said to us is this is kind of a priority for them to put it back. I think they have put back 3 of the 43 back, so it's a long list still to go through. Yeah. Yeah.
But confident that it'll get there, so that's positive.
Yeah.
So forgive the wording of this question, but Chile has an extraordinary coastline and some remarkable marine biodiversity. What are the specific ecosystems or species that this new MPA in the region would most meaningfully protect?
Yeah. So Juan Fernandez and Desventuradas, which are two different archipelagos, have some of the highest actually endemisms and diversity around the world. I mean, it's higher than Galapagos in terms of endemisms. It inland and in the water. So it makes an incredible special place. You know? It's kind of in between the Humboldt Current and then sort of have a little bit of more Pacific sort of, a little bit tropical even touch, you know. And so the mix is very interesting because you can see a little bit of the Humboldt and you can see a little bit of the Polynesia sort of like species too. The amount of the biomass is incredible too. Yeah. So diving there is really impressive to see, you know, walls of fish. I mean, like it really is beautiful. Both between the two archipelagos, there's a lot of movement. So many of the same species also are in both places, or they move constantly between them, and the community does too. Yeah. Desventuradas is way more isolated. Right. Both archipelagos are very isolated, but Desventuradas even more. So the diversity and the endemisms is extremely high on fish, on crustaceans, on mollusks. I mean everything. And then you have this very pelagic species also that are going through. One of the things, you know, is being exploited basically by the industry, mainly the jack mackerel, but then also by the swordfish fishery, which is called an artisanal, but really semi-industrial with boats with a capacity of 50 tons. Right. And so there have been some damage also historically on the seamounts. Yeah. For example, previously with the industry on the orange Raffi. And little by little, you know, with the community, we've worked on better, bigger marine protection, and now it's basically the whole sort of ecoregion is protected with this new protection, which is incredible.
So on that, so looking at how that sort of plays into this wider concept or mission, of the 30 by 30 and this network of high seas MPAs. Can you talk us through the central role that this one plays?
So, for example, the in between the two islands, I mean groups of islands, there is this communication, and then there is a piece that is actually not into the 200 miles of Chile, so it's high seas. Right. But the communication is there. I mean, there's, and you can see it also by the fishing fleets of China, even Cook Island, going fishing there, and others in the industry of Chile, of course, EU, etc. Yeah. And you see that passage there is actually being cutted in a way, by this effort. It's like having, you have your house and the school of the kids at the other side of a very busy road. Right. You'd be lucky if they can cross. Yeah. And so this is what is happening. We need to connect, and this is what we need to go with. But also these groups of islands, and Desventuradas in particular, is part of the Nazca Ridge. The Nazca Ridge is a massive, one of the biggest, ridge underwater range on Earth. Mm-hmm. Definitely one of the highest endemism and biodiversity on Earth too, and it's stretched basically from Rapa Nui, from Easter Island, all the way to the outside of Peru, basically. So it kind of does a little kind of curve, and so these seamounts are also part of it. But they have their own sort of diversity too, and endemism. The Schmidt Ocean did several expeditions in the area, and they found hundreds of new species in some of the seamounts. But many of them are, of course, too connected with the Nazca Ridge. So this is part of a massive system that really is feeding not just Chile, but is feeding the whole Pacific. And I think we need to protect it better, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, Max, you have such a great way of describing these places. I actually feel like I'm following this along with you, like visually. I can see it. It's really good. Okay, so talking more about the 30 by 30 commitment. So we're a few years into this commitment, and actually a few years away from sort of that 2030 deadline. How would you honestly sort of assess the progress that's being made, and do you think we're on track?
There are two key elements. You know, with Juan Fernandez, with this new expansion, actually, we reached 10.1%, which is incredible. No, that's a huge milestone. Even though it's like a little bit after, you know, that actually objective, it's already passed. But I think we see some interest, we see some motivation from countries, and we, as I was saying before, we even get called to support countries to move forward. I think we are moving forward, not in the speed that we should, for sure, but I think there's a lot of interest. Now, one of the things, and one of my personal frustrations was during the negotiations of the CBD, we ended up with this 30%, but not much of the quality. And the quality, the scientists like Callum Roberts and many others have said very clearly, it needs to be high quality. It's not just, you can't create a marine protected area that still allows industrial fishing, deep sea mining even in some of the cases. Yeah. And so in that 10%, there's a lot of that. And we need to really come together to protect, in a good way. I mean, you can't expect, to have apples from a pear tree. I mean, you need to have a marine protected area well protected if you want really results from that protection. And the only way is to really do it in the highest level of protection. Yeah. This area, for example, Juan Fernandez, it's almost 1 million kilometers square now of protection, one of the three biggest marine protected areas on Earth, but it's no take. Yeah. No. Right. And we will see how things are going to recover, how things are going to come back. Yeah. But we need to protect process. We need to do it multilaterally. Yeah. The species move through what we call it frontiers, so, outside of or inside of the 200 miles, country to the other. So we need to come together to that. And in doing that, need to be better quality.
Yeah, and actually you lent into the next question I was going to ask you, which was about what is the most critical or the more significant work? Is it about ensuring that those MPAs that are developed actually do offer protection, or is it or is it getting that 30%, but they still allow in bottom trawling and whatnot? Even if we don't hit that 30 target, is it most critical that the protections that we do have in place are fully protected?
Yeah, I think to me it's the fact that they're well protected. They're well protected in terms of like the quality of protection, and no take is the best protection. There's a lot of voices that say like, oh yeah, we're creating a lot of protected areas, but then there are paper parks. Yeah. Well, one of the simple ways to really change that is to create marine protected areas that don't allow any extraction, and then it will make the implementation, and in particular the enforcement, much easier. Yeah. If you have a big marine protected area that is no take, why should a fishing vessel be inside? Simple as that, no? Yeah. And so you don't have to check if the vessel is doing it with the right gear, in the right time, with the right species, with the right sort of like permit. This is what happens when you have a marine protected area that still allows some sort of extraction. You need so much more money to actually be sure that those things are happening, are among the rules. But when you have a no-take, it's simple. Yeah. You have science that need to be proved. Of course, we need to monitor things if they're working, and of course, you need to also enforce them. Yeah. But it's much easier to do any of those things if you have something that is clearly well protected.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how do you go about then gaining that consensus from all the communities around this, around the conversations? So fishing communities, the stakeholders, how do you bridge that gap, and what lessons can we learn from the Juan Fernandez example that we can then take to other places?
Yeah, I mean, many communities, if you look around, they have the knowledge of what it means to be, to create a protection. a matter of fact, we kind of like think that this idea of protection is a new idea by the science currently or the information we have. But if you look at the Polynesians, they've been doing it for over 1,000 years. No, I mean, they have the Rahui, the Tapu, and there were areas actually to be protected that then they could see the recovery of some species, the benefit to the whole community. The Rahuis are very interesting. They go and extract, for example, in the area once it's open, so they kind of like temporal closures, that then they go and take, but they take equally to everyone in the community. And so the effort of being closing is kind of good for everyone then in the next step. So we have that, and many of the fishermen knows if I leave that alone, it will come back. But we normally confront this sense of I need to take it sooner. The tragedy of the commons normally, and so the sooner I go, the sooner I get it, then I get something out of it. I think we know better, and those fishermen actually knows better what conservation brings. And then there's the examples that of the science, Papahana makuakea, for example, the incredible amount of new fish and bigger fish and better quality, that actually is extending way beyond the marine protected area. Revillagigedo too, and many other places that are actually showing. The community have seen it in Juan Fernandez, and that's why they wanted more of protection. They saw that some of the previous creation of marine protection, they've been in several phases. Every time they see something coming back. Every time they protect more, there's something more, not just for them, but even for other communities, for other fishing groups, etc. And so it's proved. We need to do a better job though on monitoring and showing that to the world.
Yeah, totally. Like, that's just got me thinking about, like, obviously these are communities that have that inherent sort of connection and knowledge, indigenous knowledge of that relationship with the ocean. But how do you show that, and how does that translate to, the Western world, or to the UK, for example, which is, essentially an island nation, but completely disconnected from that sort of aspect of it? That's probably too big a question to ask, but I've asked it.
I think, I've seen it, and I think there's, I had this opportunity to work with the community of Rapa Nui, in the Pacific. It's the most isolated place on Earth. It's the furthest from any continent, and you could see when we started there, it was a community that was in a way disattached from the ocean, even though they can be more connected with the ocean. And it was because of many things, mainly because of they were fighting to bring back their land, because of different processes the government had taken it, and many other things. But they were looking into the land mainly. And when we came, they thought, that the marine protected area was another way of taking the ocean from them.
Yeah.
But then when they realized they actually could have more access, or they could have more decision over, then they understood that actually the marine protected area was a good way to go. And I think if you start kind of digging into every community and you kind of show them what is possible, and through the protection, for example, then you find it. I've heard it in Scotland, for example, local communities who are kind of understanding, wow, if we create a marine protected area, that will push these industrial, dredgers and bottom trawling or other, destructive fishing methods that, we've created to continue taking as much as we can. And they are protecting their community, they're protecting their ecosystems. And I think there's this little by little discovery. And in Chile, it explodes. I mean, many communities are now asking for marine protection in many ways. We have indigenous, we have the normal things. There's also like the management areas that are also used as a protection too. And then they have an understand that there is a possibility through the conservation that can actually protect in longer term, sort of like secure food, secure stability, secure their family, or just their way of life.
It's so interesting. I know, because I'm so guilty of sort of rolling out the cliche of like community and collaboration is what we need and everything. But actually, the more and more that I hear the stories, like the more and more that is actually a true, and it's a cliche for a reason because it is so true and it just resonates deeper and deeper that the way forward is to come together and work together collaboratively. So it's so fascinating. All right, so looking ahead then, I think we've covered the 30 by 30 stuff and you know the goal there. What is the single biggest threat to 30 by 30 goal right now? Is it political will? Is it funding, enforcement, or is it something else?
It's a great question. I think that it is a mix of things too. I'm worried of the politicization of things, no? Like it happened in the US with climate change. You say climate change and then they said you're a Democrat. Which, why? Why? Should have anything to do with that, no? Because climate change is beyond Democrats or Republicans, no? And I think, and I'm hoping that this is not going to happen with the ocean. And as far as I can see, it's been a little bit away from that sort of like situation. In Chile, again, we have created more and more marine protected areas through right wing, left wing, right wing, left wing, now left wing, and you know, like I mean, there have been this race to the top, not to the bottom. And in many places have been like that, no? So I'm hoping that this is going to stay there. I think it's also to understand the marine protected areas is also a peace sort of tool, you know. I'm hoping many can understand that, you know, if you try to exploit, the only is going to get to, you know, a kind of like a crashing moment when you know you have confrontations between different groups, etc. But if you protect, it's just kind of a peace sort of offer, and then a future sort of thinking on how that area actually will promote more fishing, more whatever. No. So I think I don't see much of danger unless we don't understand those things, and I think in part it's maybe the biggest, always I said, you know, threat are ignorance, and then of course this world that now is engulfed into this crazy situation of, you know, war and you know, competition for who is stronger, or you know, I think we look into what we are and look into our house, and this is it. This is what we have. There's no more. We are the same. Oh no, and I think the only threat that's, you know, that we don't understand, that we don't realize, that's the fact, and no more than that. I don't know. It sounds kind of like dreamy or whatever, but
no, it doesn't, and it doesn't, because actually, when you're faced with the, so we've recently had something over here. It was a call to action. It was called the National Emergency Briefing. It was brought together by Chris Packham, a British activist and environmentalist, and it was about getting this message to the wider media and to cross-party sort of thing. Like, forget politics, leave your politics and your party allegiances at the door. This is the reality. And it was this report that sort of showcased the ecosystem collapse that we are like dangerously close to. It all points to global conflict at the end of the day. So it's now a national security threat. So yeah, I mean that is the heavy truth of what we're facing. But we can't be mired by that. You know, we've got to now utilise that to go out and drive the positive action and change that is needed. But all the same, it can't be ignored, and we can't just sort of close or be blinkered. So that's what we're facing if we don't actually take some action right now. But yeah, not to be mired down by all the heaviness. Should we talk about hope and hope for the future? And well, firstly, what can an individual? What do you think, or what advice would you give to an individual that wants to start driving some positivity and positive change?
you know, I think it's again a sense of society. We tend to think about us, ourselves, or others as consumers. You know, I hear a lot of NGOs or, you know, individuals calling for like eat this, don't eat this, buy this, don't buy this. I think we're way more than just consumers. Yes, we can do that too. Of course, you have the decision. I mean, I stopped drinking Coca-Cola 20 years ago. I don't have TV over 20 years. I don't know. There's things that you can control your life for sure. But also, I think the most powerful thing you can do is associating with another individual, and then bigger and then bigger, and to really call attention and ask for what is needed. I've seen it now in the United States with this current political situation. People, I feel like they were not used to, and now they're coming together. People are talking. People are coming out of their houses. They walk. They protest. They do whatever. Coming from Chile, where protest was the only way almost, but we got together, and at a certain point, I feel like we lost it in this capitalist world of like be a consumer to express yourself, and I would say be less consumer, be more citizen. I think that's the best.
Yeah, I really like that actually, and I do feel like there's a few things that have happened here in the UK recently that I feel like there's little rumblings or little hints that there might be something bubbling up, and there might be this sort of mindset change. And one of them was this documentary about just how much pollution we're chucking into our local coastal waters and the rivers and whatnot. So from my perspective, I anticipate that we're going to go through like a little bit of a transition phase where people who do wake up to this, rather than feeling hopeful, we're going to feel very angry, actually, first off, about what's being done. Yeah. And then they're going to feel emboldened, and then they're going to want to take some action. And then they're going to start holding people to account. Yeah. And then I think comes the hope that things are going to change. I think that's what the pathway we may be looking at society. But what gives you that ultimate sort of idea of hope?
I mean, what gives me hope, it's the fact that we know how to change, as human beings. We've come together so many times. We have changed things, like the war, the Second War, and all that we learned out of that. To, I guess, that it's getting lost a little bit, But we've come together in so many times. I've seen, for example, again, as a Chilean, I saw all the support of so many countries, individuals, organizations around the world to support Chile at a certain point. And it was beautiful to see it, I feel now there is this global movement also, too. And I feel inspired when people use what they have. I love John Lennon. It's like one of my biggest lights, and what an amazing individual to use music and art, to call attention that still resonate today, I think we have that intelligence, we have those tools, we have everything. And then most incredible, it's we have still a functional planet. I mean, we still have it. Yeah. We still can save it. We have this incredible mountains with forests, with glaciers, coral reefs. We have beautiful rivers that are still running. And I just, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna sit down and look at it like disappearing? I don't think anyone wants it. And I think we have the energy, we have the means, we have now incredible technology that help us maybe to do better.
Yeah, man. I love that. And I love ending on a note of John Lennon and the Beatles.
Yeah, exactly.
Max, thanks so much for chatting. It's been really really inspiring, actually, and I loved going on that journey with you, so thank you very much.
No, thank you, guys. I love Oceanographic, my favorite magazine.
There you go.